Bernadette is a combination of two particular women in publishing. One is Eleanor Gold Packard. She was known as the grammarian, and she was a copy editor for the New Yorker magazine for about 50 or so years, getting her start around the time that this book takes place. And I found her story to be extremely inspiring. And there was a pretty awesome mic drop moment she had in getting her job at the New Yorker, which I tweaked a little bit to include in Confessions of a Grammar Queen for Bernadette. And the second woman is named Phyllis E. Gran, and she was the first female CEO of a publishing house. She also got her start in publishing in the late 50s as an editor and worked her way up to become the CEO, not until 1987. But she is very inspiring. So Bernadette was a combination of both of those women. There's a lot going on in the 1950s and 60s. Women were not seen as being on equal footing as men, often mostly just secretaries, or even if they had positions such as a copy editor, the higher ups might say, hey, can you still go get my coffee? So it was kind of, they were trying to figure out that landscape, so to speak. And in 1963, when the story takes place, the Equal Pay Act was passed in Congress. So basically saying that women were supposed to be paid equally to the men in the same positions. And that took a lot more finagling than just a law being passed. So Bernadette is struggling with that in the book as well, and encouraging other women in her profession and other professions to seek raises and promotions and things based on merit. So I had a lot of fun digging into that. I was visiting the New York Public Library and doing some research there, and I thought, you know what, this would be such a cool place to host a book club. And then I saw, when I was doing a little tour, there was like I guess it was gated off area, but it looked like one of those old gates, and there's all this really cool stuff behind it. And I thought, wouldn't it be so cool if there was like an after hours, like you could get in here and have your book club or just read or something like that. And so I thought, oh, I have to add that into the book. And it just seems like another fun sort of quirky thing that Bernadette and her friends would do. And they make friends with a janitor who lets them in, for their book club. And they sneak in and talk about all the different things that they're reading and the various things that they're going through in their personal lives as well. In the book club, there's a lot of different women. First of all, there's her really good friend from work, Melanie, and then her roommate from college, Penelope. And then also there is a woman named Ruth who is in the group, and Ruth is actually based on Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was a young lawyer at the time, and has her starting her family at that time too. So also dealing with a lot of the same sort of women's issues in the workplace in the 60s. And there's also a nurse and some housewives. I really tried to make it like a broad range of women from different professions, and also women who were just homemakers, just because everybody was dealing with sort of the same things and trying to figure out their lives and their happiness. So it felt like a good combination. I was just really looking up like what was popular during the 1960s. And of course, in college, I had come across Betty Friedan's book, The Feminine Mystique, in one of my women's studies classes. But I didn't realize that it was so popular and that it had just been published right at the perfect time for this book. So I thought, well, that's a good one for them to read to kind of get an idea of what, they don't know about women's lives and what they might be able to expect. And then another one that was pretty funny was the Kinsey reports. They had put out a report previously about men and male sexuality in their bodies, but they had just recently put out another one about women. And so a lot of women back in the 50s, 60s, and before then even didn't really know a lot about their own bodies or what to expect. And so it was interesting for them to kind of dig into it and talk about that a little bit. I always start this question off with sort of somewhat of a joke, because I was at a bar and I met a dog named Frank, and that is actually true. And when I met him, I thought, you know what, I have to put him into a book. He was a Harlequin Great Dane. When I was at the bar, he walked in like he owned the place. He was greeted by the customers. They were giving him their fries. They were giving him sips of their water. And I thought, okay, what is happening right now? This dog is like the owner of the bar or something. So it turns out that his owner was actually a regular. And so Frank was a regular of the place as well. And I thought, you know what, I really want to write from this perspective. I had previously written from a corgi's perspective in The Queen's Faithful Companion, and I had a blast with that. So I wanted to be able to explore that again, but this time from, a dog that was, sort of the mayor of the town. So he has his own chapters. They're meant to bring some levity to the story as well. He's Bernadette's, companion. He's her bodyguard sometimes, but he's also a little bit sneaky, and he sneaks out of the house and he goes and helps, people around the neighborhood. He kind of thinks of himself as like the mayor of their little area that they live in. So he's just a funny, goofy dog, and but also plays an important role in, keeping her feeling like she's protected, but also giving her some confidence when she is put into some sort of dangerous situations. Like, I just really wanted this book to represent, like, not only women in the workplace back then, but also women are still struggling today with sort of the same sorts of things. Like, they're not always paid the same. They're sometimes passed up for promotions. A lot of times, women feel like they're held back because they might have had to take off a lot of time to have a baby or raise kids or things like that. So it takes them a lot longer to get to certain places in the workforce. So I did touch on that a little bit in the book as well, because back in the 60s, there was no such thing as maternity leave. Basically, if you went to have a baby, you would lose your job. And so that was something that they had to think about as well. And I just, I wanted everyone to kind of learn what it was like, but also kind of notice the correlation a little bit. And yeah, I would agree that I think writers had a little bit more agency back then. It was definitely harder to work your way up. I mean, considering the fact that the first CEO of a publishing house wasn't until the late 80s. I know that definitely surprised me, given that women were editors. I think it just took a lot more for them to get to that place.